I guess you also know that feeling when the meeting in which you've participated could have been an email as well. In fact, by either cutting meetings short or even getting rid of some of your meetings, you can save yourself hours, days, or even weeks of work, and I'm not kidding. I've just done some math and found out that over the last couple of years of my consulting career, I've roughly had 3,000 to 4,000 meetings. That's crazy, but I'm not kidding. Now imagine how much of a difference it makes if a meeting takes 30 versus 60 or even 90 minutes. You can quickly double your meeting time or on the other side, cut it in half. And for those cases, however, where a meeting is unavoidable, I will share some super practical tips to keep meetings short and to the point, such that your days will become more productive, targeted, and less wasteful in the future. Hi all, my name is Leah, and on this channel I share practical career advice and my learnings from my self-development journey that shall also help and inspire you to live a more conscious, balanced, and happy life. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and activate the bell. Starting with tip number 1 to keep your meeting time as short but still as efficient and targeted as possible, only schedule a meeting if it's really required. That may sound really basic, but oftentimes meetings are just set up for the sake of it. However, before sending out an invite or accepting one, challenge the necessity of the meeting. So ask yourself if it's really necessary to set up a separate meeting for this topic, or if it makes sense to briefly call the person or write a quick email or chat message. If in doubt, you could do one of the following things. First, just decline the invite. In case the topic is super important and your input is required, I'm sure the organizer will always get back to you. Alternatively, you could just ask the organizer why your presence in the meeting is required, or you could ask for a shorter meeting slot, so 30 instead of 45 or 60 minutes. If you conclude that it actually makes sense to participate in that meeting or set one up yourself, be cautious about its setup. On the one hand, you should keep Parkinson's law in the back of your mind. The law describes that work always expands to fill the allocated time. So to keep meetings naturally short, you should also block as little time as possible. That way, people will implicitly be forced to cut out the necessary chit-chat and focus on the core topics, since they know from the invite they only have limited time. So instead of always using the default meeting time in Outlook or Gmail, which is often 30 minutes, think about whether the meeting could also be done in 20 or maybe even in 15 or 10 minutes. And don't be shy to just put that time in someone's calendar. On the other hand, make sure to select meeting participants wisely. In other words, invite only those people that are absolutely necessary for the meeting. The larger group of meeting participants gets, the more complex a meeting becomes to handle, as well as the more difficult it may get to reach a specific outcome or consensus. So that's not only because more people means more different opinions, but also most of the time, each and every meeting participant also wants to express their opinions and thoughts, even if they have nothing to do with the actual topic at hand. So even if someone does not share a new insight or thought, they just say something for the sake of it, which artificially lengthens the meeting. Therefore, make sure to only invite the required experts and decision makers to reach your specific meeting objectives. Now that you have your selected group of people and a time slot for the meeting, make sure to have and communicate the agenda and or the goal of the meeting in advance to the participants. What I see quite often is that an agenda or a goal is not even mentioned in a meeting invite, which leaves the participants clueless of what to expect. In that case, participants can also not prepare properly since they don't know what's required or expected from them. Therefore, to get to your goal and end the meeting as fast as possible, make sure everyone knows what to expect by communicating the objectives of the meeting upfront. Sometimes even just a one-liner or a simple 3-bullet agenda in the meeting invite is sufficient to set the stage. Besides communicating agenda and the meeting goal to the participants, you should also make sure to send prep material in advance, but only if it makes sense. If there's a document that requires review prior to the meeting, you should obviously send it through such that you do not need to repeat its content in the meeting itself and by that waste valuable time. However, only share documents that are worth sharing and support your agenda and ideally even speed up the meeting itself. Do not share documents that are out of context or might only confuse the other meeting participants. This can, for example, be the case for rather complex documents where it might make sense to explicitly spend time in the meeting to recap on their content and relevance. So before just randomly sending out prep material to the meeting participants, make sure to recap your meeting objectives, think about meeting participants and their prior knowledge, and then decide if and what kind of material you would like or need to share before the meeting. Tip number 6 to keep meetings short: manage time wisely. First, this should be done by being punctual, and yes, being on time should be a no-brainer. However, for some, it's not. Just imagine if you are coming 5 minutes late to a 20-minute meeting. It might be hard to finish on or even before time. So therefore, being punctual is not only required to keep meetings short, but it's also just a general gesture of respect and friendliness. Also make sure to watch time within the meeting, either by monitoring time overall and trying to come to an end at least 5 minutes before the meeting ends. Or if you might have an agenda with dedicated time slots to each topic, in that case, try to only spend the allocated time on each agenda item. Otherwise, you might run out of time and will not be able to cover all of the topics. And to stay on time, it often also makes sense to set some basic meeting rules. This can be simple guidelines such as putting phones aside and not doing other work in parallel, keeping questions or remarks until the end of the meeting and not asking them in between, or staying within the respective agenda item and not mixing up different topics. Holding on to such basic rules that should, at least in my opinion, be quite obvious will make your meetings much more effective. Speaking of rules, they should also be enforced somehow. Especially for longer meetings or workshops, it makes sense to have different roles assigned to different people, such that everyone can focus on a specific aspect. For example, one can be the host or leading moderator, one can be the timekeeper, one can be the note taker, and a fourth person could be the co-moderator. By having such dedicated roles and responsibilities, meetings become much more efficient and effective since activities are not duplicated and everyone is super focused on their area of responsibility without any duplications. And finally, tip number 9, which is to have an urge to close. In other words, you should always focus on the actual topic of the meeting and keep your end goal in mind. By having an urge to close, I mean you should focus on asking the right questions or triggering the right discussions that help you to get to your goal and get the most out of the meeting on time. Often there are many words being used in meetings, but no real implications are taken out of it. So it's your role and obligation to steer the discussion towards the ultimate question or decision that needs to be made. In case you are the host or moderator, but in any other case as well, feel free to also cut out some random discussions that do not bring you closer to your goal. You can always park those discussions and get back to them later if time allows. If all that sounds plausible to you, I'd appreciate if you would give the video a like, and also I highly recommend this video where I share my best practices to take good meeting notes, or this one where I share tips to become more organized. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell, and see you next time.